Hello, my friends. Welcome back to English Fluency. I'm Sam, and I'm really happy you're here today. Today's episode is a 1-hour listening and shadowing practice. A calm, gentle story about life, about change, courage, and personal growth. The language you'll hear is slow, clear, and simple. Perfect for beginners. I want you to relax. Just listen. You can repeat the sentences aloud if you like, or shadow my voice. This is how you train your ears, your mouth, and your brain to start thinking in English, naturally. This isn't a grammar lesson. It's not a list of vocabulary words. It's a story, and stories are powerful. They help you understand real sentences, real feelings, and real conversations. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. It really helps me create more lessons like this one. So, find a quiet place, take a deep breath, and let's begin this journey together. My name is Tom. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a small town near the sea. Every morning, I wake up early, I open my window and let the fresh air come in. The sky is soft and light, and I love mornings. They always feel like a new beginning. I make a cup of tea, sit by the window, and watch the sun slowly rise higher and higher. But today feels different, special. Because today is the first day of a new chapter in my life. For many years, my life was the same. I went to work, came home, ate dinner, slept, and repeated it all again. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't exciting either. I felt like a small boat, always moving in circles, never exploring the open sea. I wanted to grow. I wanted to learn who I really am. To become someone stronger, calmer, kinder.
So, I made a promise to myself. From today, I'll say yes to new experiences. I'll try one new thing every week. It doesn't matter if I succeed or fail. What matters is that I try. I smiled when I wrote those words. They were simple, but they felt powerful. Growth doesn't happen in a day. It's built slowly, step by step. As I drank the last sip of my coffee, I felt a little nervous, but also excited. Something inside me was changing, and this time I was ready for it. That first week, I chose something simple. I decided to walk to work instead of taking the bus. It wasn't a big change, but it felt different from the very first step. The morning air was cool and fresh. I could feel the wind brushing against my face. The sky was pale, the streets quiet. As I walked, I started to notice things I'd never seen before. A small bakery on the corner, the smell of warm bread floating through the door. A cat sleeping under a wooden bench, stretching lazily in the sun. A father holding his little daughter's hand, both of them laughing about something together. They were small, ordinary moments, but they felt special because I was present. I wasn't rushing, I wasn't looking at my phone, I was just walking and seeing the world. Maybe, I thought, there are beautiful things around me every day. I just never looked closely enough. At first, the walk wasn't easy. It was longer than I expected, and my legs began to ache. I thought about stopping and catching the bus halfway. But then I remembered my promise, to try new things and not give up too quickly. So I kept walking, and with every step, I felt a little stronger. The road felt a little shorter, the morning a little brighter, and somewhere inside me, a quiet voice whispered, "This is how change begins, one small step at a time." When I finally reached the office, I felt different, awake. alive. And that day, I decided to do one more new thing: talk to Anna. She was a colleague I often saw in the lunchroom, always reading interesting books. I'd always wanted to talk to her, but I was too shy. I thought, she's probably busy. She might not want to talk. But today, I decided to try. I smiled, walked over, and said, "Hi, Anna. That book looks interesting. What's it about?" She looked up and smiled back. "Oh, it's about a woman who travels alone across Asia," she said. Then she laughed softly. I love stories about travel. We started talking. At first, my voice was shaky, but soon it felt natural. We talked about books, about the places we wanted to visit, and about the best food we'd ever tasted. I discovered she was kind, funny, and easy to talk to. Later, I realized something important. Most of my fears were only in my head. They looked big and scary, like shadows. But when I faced them, they disappeared.
That evening, as I walked home, my legs were tired again, but my heart felt light. I'd done 2 new things today. I walked to work, and I talked to someone new. They were small actions, but they meant a lot. At home, I wrote in my notebook, "Today, I took 2 steps. They were small, but they moved me forward." I felt the air on my face. I saw the world around me. I spoke without fear, and I learned that change begins with simple choices. Growth is not a race. It's not about doing everything fast. It's a slow walk, one step, then another. And I'm learning to enjoy the walk. The next morning, I walked again. This time, I noticed even more: the sound of leaves under my feet, the smell of coffee from a cafe, the way sunlight touched the rooftops. I said hello to the same cat on the bench. The father and daughter waved at me as I passed by. And in that moment, I understood something deeper. Small steps may look small, but they change how we see the world. One day, after work, I decided to walk home by the sea. The sun was setting, the waves moved gently, the air smelled of salt. It was one of those peaceful evenings when the world feels calm and quiet. As I walked, I noticed an old man sitting on a bench. His face was full of deep wrinkles, but his eyes were bright, warm, calm. I sat next to him. He turned, smiled, and said hello. We started talking. His voice was slow and soft, like the rhythm of the waves. His name was Samuel. He was 80 years old, and he'd lived in this town all his life. He told me he came to this bench every evening to watch the sea and think. "The sea is my oldest friend," he said. He pointed to the water. "Look at the waves. Sometimes they're calm and soft, sometimes wild and strong, but they always keep moving. Life is the same. It changes with the seasons. It teaches patience. It teaches strength." Then he said something I'll never forget. "We grow when we listen. To others, to the world, and to ourselves." Most people, he said, talk too much and listen too little. But if you truly listen, life will show you the way. After he spoke, I sat quietly. The sound of the sea felt different now, deeper. The wind seemed to carry a message. On my way home, I kept thinking about his words. I realized that I often try to control everything: my plans, my future, my success. But maybe growth isn't about control. Maybe it's about trust. Trusting the process. Trusting that life knows how to guide me, if I just listen.
That night, I sat by my window. The sky was dark and full of stars. The world was silent. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Today I learned to listen. Wisdom often comes quietly." From that day, I began practicing listening, not just with my ears, but with my heart. I listened to the rain tapping on my window. I listened to children laughing outside. I listened to the silence of the night. And most importantly, I started listening to myself. I listened to my thoughts, even the uncomfortable ones. I listened to my feelings, even the sad or confusing ones. I listened to my fears, not to run from them, but to understand them. Slowly, I began to understand myself more deeply. I noticed what brought me joy and what caused me stress. I learned to be gentle with my emotions, patient with my journey. Listening became a daily habit, a way to connect with the world and with who I truly am. And with each passing day, I felt a quiet transformation inside me.
Life, I realized, speaks all the time, in the wind, in the waves, in people, and deep within our hearts. All we have to do is listen. 2 weeks later, I decided to do something that scared me: public speaking. Yes, speaking in front of people. At work, we had small meetings every Friday. Usually, I stayed quiet. But this time, I raised my hand and offered to share an idea. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. A voice in my head said, "You'll make a mistake. People will laugh." But I remembered my promise to step into discomfort to grow. So I stood up and spoke. At first, my voice was soft, but it grew stronger with every sentence. When I finished, there was silence. Then my manager smiled and said, "That's a great idea, Tom." A warm feeling spread through me. I felt proud, not because my idea was perfect, but because I had the courage to speak. Later, I wrote in my notebook, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing something even when fear is there." Fear is part of life. Everyone feels it. But when we face it, even in small ways, it loses power. And every time we step forward, we grow a little stronger. Now, not everything I tried went well. Some things went wrong, and that's okay. That's part of the journey too. About a month into my promise, I decided to take a painting class. I'd always admired art, but I'd never painted anything before. In my imagination, I thought I'd be good at it. I pictured people saying, "Wow, you're so talented." Well, the reality was different. My first painting was a mess. The colors mixed in strange ways, the shapes were unclear, and even the teacher looked a little confused. For a moment, I felt disappointed, frustrated. I wanted to quit. I thought, maybe this isn't for me. But then I remembered. I didn't promise to succeed. I promised to try. So I kept painting. The second painting was still bad. The third one was a little better. And the fourth one, well, it still wasn't good, but it made me smile. And that's when I learned something important. Failure isn't the opposite of growth. It's part of it. Every mistake teaches you something new. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "I failed today, and I'm grateful." Because failure is a teacher too. As the weeks passed, I started to notice something else. I was often too hard on myself. I expected too much. I wanted to grow fast, to see results every day. And when I didn't, I felt frustrated. One evening, after a long day, I looked in the mirror and asked, "Why am I not better yet?" Then I remembered something Samuel, the old man, once told me. He said, "You shouldn't shout at a flower and tell it to grow faster. You should give it water, sunlight, and time."
I realized I needed to do the same for myself. Growth takes time. It needs patience, care, and kindness. That night, I wrote myself a letter. In it, I forgave myself for my mistakes. I thanked myself for trying. And I promised to treat myself with compassion and understanding, just like I'd treat a friend. The next morning, I felt lighter. I walked to work slowly. I enjoyed the cool wind and smiled at strangers. I even stopped by the sea for a few quiet minutes. I wrote in my notebook, "Being kind to myself is not weakness, it's strength. It gives me the energy to keep growing." I began to see that growth isn't only about what happens inside us. It's also about how we connect with others. I used to think I had to do everything alone. But slowly, I learned that sharing the journey with others makes it richer and more meaningful. One weekend, I volunteered at a local community center. We cleaned the park and planted flowers. There were children, parents, grandparents, everyone working together. We laughed, we talked, we got our hands dirty. At the end of the day, my back hurt and my clothes were dusty, but my heart felt full. A woman there told me her story. She said she moved to this town 5 years ago and felt lonely for a long time. Then she found the community center. She said, "Volunteering changed everything. I found friends here. I found a purpose." Her words stayed with me. We're all searching for connection, to be seen, valued, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. That night, I wrote, "Growth is not a solo journey. It's something we build together." Sometimes, growth means adding new things to our lives. But sometimes, it means letting go. One day, I opened an old box and found a notebook from 5 years ago. Inside were plans I never finished, goals I never reached, and dreams that no longer mattered. For a moment, I felt sad. It looked like failure. But then I realized something. It's okay to change. It's okay to outgrow old dreams. The person I was 5 years ago isn't the person I am today. So I decided to throw the old notebook away, not because it was meaningless, but because I was ready to write a new story. That evening, I walked to the sea. The waves washed over the sand and erased my footprints. I watched them disappear, and I smiled. Letting go is like that. It makes space for something new. I wrote, "I let go today of old dreams, old fears, old expectations. Now I'm ready for what comes next." It's been 3 months since I made that first promise to myself, and many things have changed. One Sunday morning, I decided to spend the whole day alone. No phone, no internet, no plans. Just me, my thoughts, and the quiet around me. At first, it felt strange. My hands kept reaching for my phone. My mind felt restless. But after a while, something began to change. The noise inside me, all the worries, the doubts, the plans, started to fade. I sat by the window and watched the clouds move slowly across the sky. I listened to my breathing. I felt my heartbeat steady and calm. And in that silence, I began to understand myself more deeply. I thought about what truly mattered, not what others expected, but what I truly wanted in my heart. That night, I wrote, Growth is not a solo journey. It's something we build together. Sometimes, growth means adding new things to our lives. But sometimes, it means letting go. One day, I opened an old box and found a notebook from 5 years ago. Inside were plans I never finished, goals I never reached, and dreams that no longer mattered. For a moment, I felt sad. It looked like failure. But then I realized something. It's okay to change. It's okay to outgrow old dreams. The person I was 5 years ago isn't the person I am today. So I decided to throw the old notebook away, not because it was meaningless, but because I was ready to write a new story. That evening, I walked to the sea. The waves washed over the sand and erased my footprints. I watched them disappear, and I smiled. Letting go is like that. It makes space for something new. I wrote, I let go today of old dreams, old fears, old expectations. Now I'm ready for what comes next. It's been 3 months since I made that first promise to myself, and many things have changed. One Sunday morning, I decided to spend the whole day alone. No phone, no internet, no plans. Just me, my thoughts, and the quiet around me. At first, it felt strange. My hands kept reaching for my phone. My mind felt restless. But after a while, something began to change. The noise inside me, all the worries, the doubts, the plans, started to fade. I sat by the window and watched the clouds move slowly across the sky. I listened to my breathing. I felt my heartbeat steady and calm. And in that silence, I began to understand myself more deeply. I thought about what truly mattered, not what others expected, but what I truly wanted in my heart. So I wrote in my notebook, silence is not empty, it's full of answers. From that day, I made quiet moments part of my routine. Short walks, without music, just time to be. These small pauses helped me grow from the inside out, because growth isn't always exciting. Sometimes it's slow and invisible. Like a tree, it grows quietly under the soil, long before anyone sees its leaves. I learned that lesson when I started running. At first, I could only run for 5 minutes. I wanted quick results. I wanted to run an hour right away. But my body said no. It was easy to feel frustrated, to think, I'm not improving. But I kept going. 5 minutes became 10. 10 became 20. Slowly, week by week, I built strength. And one morning, 3 months later, I ran for a full hour. I stopped by the sea, breathing hard but smiling. It wasn't magic. It was patience. Small steps repeated again and again. And I realized that lesson isn't just about running. It's about life. Many things grow slowly. Confidence, kindness, wisdom. But if we keep going, we'll see results. So I wrote, patience isn't waiting for things to happen. It's trusting that small actions will lead to big change. That evening, I sat in my room and looked around. My life wasn't perfect. There were still problems, still questions without answers, but there was also so much to be thankful for. A warm home, food on my table, friends who cared about me, a body that let me move, explore, and breathe, a mind that kept learning and growing. So I started a new habit. Every night, writing 3 things I was grateful for.
At first, the list was simple. I'm grateful for the sunshine. I'm grateful for a good conversation with Anna. I'm grateful for a delicious dinner. But with time, my gratitude grew deeper. One of the most beautiful surprises on this journey was discovering that growth isn't just about me. it's also about helping others grow too. At the community center, a shy boy named Leo joined our group. He reminded me of myself a few months ago, quiet, unsure. One day, I sat next to him and started talking. We talked about school, his dreams, his fears. And I told him about mine and how I faced them, step by step. Slowly, he opened up. Week by week, I saw his confidence grow. He started talking to others. He even led a small project one weekend. Watching him change taught me something powerful. When we grow, we create space for others to grow too. Our courage can inspire someone else's courage. Our kindness can plant a seed of hope. I wrote in my notebook, "Growth multiplies when shared. The more I give, the more I grow." One evening, Samuel invited me to his home for tea. His small living room was filled with books and old photographs, and the smell of wood and thyme. We sat by the fire. He told me stories from his childhood, his travels, stories about love, loss, and laughter. Some were happy, some sad, but all of them were full of wisdom. He said, "Stories help us make sense of our lives. They remind us where we came from and guide us where we're going." That night, when I returned home, I opened my notebook. I read all the pages I'd written since that first morning, each note a small piece of my story, and I smiled. I realized I was proud of this story. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every chapter, even the difficult ones, mattered. When I started this journey, it was early spring, cold mornings, quiet streets, soft light. Now, months had passed and autumn had arrived. The air smelled different. The leaves had turned gold and red. The days were shorter, but the sunsets were brighter.
I walked through the park and watched the trees let go of their leaves. At first, it looked like an ending, but I knew better now. It wasn't the end. It was part of the cycle. The trees weren't dying. They were preparing for new life. And I realized so was I. The person walking through that park wasn't the same person who once felt stuck and afraid. I was calmer now, braver. I understood myself more deeply, and I was learning to trust life. Growth isn't always visible. You can't always see it. It's quiet, it's gentle, it's slow. But when you look back, you can see how far you've come. So, I wrote in my notebook, "Change is not something to fear. It's a sign that we are alive." So, my friends, as you finish listening to this episode of English Fluency, I want to remind you of something important. Growth is not about being perfect. It's not about having everything figured out. It's about trying, step by step, day by day. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel lost. Both are part of the journey. Don't rush it. Don't compare yourself to others. Trust your own pace. Celebrate your small victories. Learn from your mistakes. And never stop walking. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of English Fluency. I'm Sam, and until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. Bye for now.